So my presentation is going to center around these problems, and I hope that this will. I want and wish to invite you to a journey in which we cover the notion of future shock. So we will talk about the future quite a lot. And secondly, the key future skills analysts and researchers are pointing at as those needed in the future for us. And then rhetoric as a social mindset, an anticipative social mindset. And finally, I'll offer you a short kind of brief outline of a program through which rhetoric as a behavior or anticipative behavior can be taught. All right, so have you realized that everything changed so far? So ChatGPT is here. In the last year, as the research has just shown with numbers, 22 million student papers were handed in to schools and to courses in which ChatGPT and AI was used. So we are facing a new era. Are you afraid? Are you a bit worried? Are you concerned? Are you afraid of the future? And if you're afraid of the future, do you remember the year 2K? I mean, some of you are nodding, but not many of you, I have to tell you. So I remember it, but many of the youngsters do not. Do you remember the hysteria that preceded the coming of the 2000, so the year 2000, because of the computers being programmed for the last two digits of the year number? It took 10 years for people to be hysterical, that everything would collapse. The financial world, so babies of 100 years of age will be born, and so forth. And you see, you can't even remember. Isn't that funny? So we can be so much afraid of the future, and it's possibly because we are living in an era of the so-called future shock. The future shock is the notion of Erwin Toffler, who first introduced this term in connection with this kind of sensing change around us and not feeling to be prepared for the changes around us. It's a kind of disease of change. Can you feel it every morning? Something is happening and we may be not so well prepared. Aren't we? Why do we feel like this? Why is this future shock? Aren't we taught enough for things like chemistry and physics and mathematics, for subject matters? So what's missing here? My proposal today is going to be that we're missing rhetoric from our general curriculum and curricula, either on the secondary educational level and on the tertiary as well. How do we know about the future? So how do you know what the future would bring you? I mean, look at this picture. It was taken from a popular film because as far as I think and as far as others think, popular culture is bringing a lot for us to consider what's coming in the future. So this is COVID, isn't it? Now this is not COVID. This is from a film from 2011 titled Contagion. And it somehow forecasts what's coming in 10 years' time. But think about this popular film that told millions of people what 2054 will look like. This is Minority Report, aired in 2002, 5 years before the first iPhone was introduced and the first touchscreen was introduced. And this film was directed by Steven Spielberg, who gathered futurologists and researchers into a hotel at the end of the 1990s, asking them to imagine what the future would look like. And they talked about touchscreens, they talked about autonomous cars, they talked about semantic web, they talked about customized kind of digital services. So somehow popular culture can tell you what's coming. But not just popular culture, but literature. Think about the very famous Polish science fiction writer Stanisław Lem's novel Solaris, which is about an ocean that's full of intelligence. Like, think about artificial intelligence. And it was written in 1961. Or think about Asimov's The Naked Sun, in which he writes about a place where there are more robots than humans, and humans do not want to meet, so it's viewing rather than seeing that we should use for kind of ways of communication. Isn't that a foretelling of what was coming at the age of, or in the year of COVID? But think about Black Mirror, or the most recent kind of TV show, a Turkish one, that is about a semantic virus, that we will die because of people talking gibberish to us. So our brain will just somehow explode. These may sound very tale-like. However, people may feel that the future is so dystopic. But you can gain knowledge about your future when you follow kind of professional forecasting as well. This is how a futurologist would think the future worker will look like. I mean, one thing is that this person is going to be female. So women will work in the workspace only and solely. But the other thing is this bodily change that these pictures are depicting, that we will, because of sitting so much in front of interfaces, will have this pale skin, ödemic, kind of swollen legs, a humpback over there, bloody eyes. Some of my students once said that, okay, at least the eyebrows are healthy. Or you can have some hint of what's coming when you go to expos like CES, the commercial electronic kind of fair every year in Las Vegas, at which you can just meet the novel innovations the market can offer you. And they are just foretelling you what to adapt to, like things and instruments you need to be open. Now guess what was the most popular innovation of this year? In the age of wars, in the age of pandemics. Now this was the VW M car, which has 32 colors. So interestingly enough, when it comes to thinking about the future, the popular culture tends to be very dystopic, while the commercial culture tends to be very optimistic, that the only problem we will have is that our cars cannot change their colors. Or the laptops with 2 interfaces, or you will be able to print yourself in 3D as a toy in your favorite film, or you can have a tracker in your toilet that tells how healthy you are every morning. You know, the tracker culture is truly growing very big. So these are the instruments that are telling what the future will bring us. And there are some more serious foretellings, like from serious literature, Orwell or Huxley. Who was right? Orwell, who said that we will be surveyed, or Huxley, who said that we are going to give our freedom to our machines and become kind of bored to neutrality and kind of ignorance, better to say. Take Yuval Harari's Homo Deus into account, in which he offered to mankind 2 paradigms to live on. One that's about the superhuman, and the other in which the human is the servant of the algorithm. Which will we use? Which is more optimistic, which is more pessimistic? Are we at all prepared to take all these forecasts? And there are so many serious things around us. You see, the climate change. New generations are so much engaged with the problems of the climate situation, or robotization, or artificial intelligence, urbanization, hundreds and thousands of people living in overpopulated cities. Do you feel this kind of bad feeling that something bad is coming, something not so positive, new weapons, wars, fake news, cyber safety? Should I continue? Tenant shortage, whatever, epidemics. But tomorrow can be very frightful as well. Just simply tomorrow, because your talk is tomorrow and you feel a bit worried. So we are not really well prepared for the future, but we tend to see the present negatively as well. Okay, I'll ask you a question and give you 3 versions of answers, okay? Please decide which is the right one, okay? So, at the moment, in the world, in the whole of the world, how many children under the age of 1 are vaccinated against some disease. So how many children? Okay? So 40%, 60%, or 80% vaccinated globally? Guess?
40.
40. Okay, I trusted you that you would give the bad answer because it's 80. It's 80%. We tend to be very pessimistic. I'm similarly very pessimistic, so I'm joking like with you, like I would joke with myself. So the thing is, and it's from Hans Rosling's Factfulness. He worked out a test of 13 questions asking you about present situation backed up by present statistical data, and it turns out that wherever you are, wherever you live, what age you are at, you will be more pessimistic than the world is. So somehow we see the future in darkness. This is what Huguenot in the 1st century put in the satires, like that we are doomed to not see the future well. But are we taught to see the future well? Alvin Toffler, in his book Future Shock, which I've already mentioned, says that we would need a new subject matter into schools, future. We are somehow the prisoner of the past and the present when it comes to being taught. And it's the same for rhetoric as well, because some and one of the most outstandingly future-proof subject matter is rhetoric. But let's not be so quick. Let's talk about the reasons why we are so much afraid of the future and the present. I will list 7 reasons, 7 cognitive reasons, okay? So the first is that loss loom larger than gains. You know it from Kahneman and Tversky from the 1979 experiment, that if you have something, okay, let's say you have this amount of money. What is a stronger feeling, if you lose it or if you earn it? Of course, when you lose it. It has twice as powerful as gaining it. So the same money is much worse when you lose it or when you gain it. You don't want to lose anything that you have. Now, when it comes to rhetoric, think about persuasion, which forces the audience to lose what's there and go into the future and adapt to something that's new. The second reason we fear for the future is uncertainty. The human mind is programmed against uncertainty. There was a recent experiment of Emma Tanovich in which participants of the experiment were given this kind of stick disc, and then a very, very kind of slight electric shock was transferred to their bodies. They were divided into 3 groups. One group was said that, that's what they heard, that in the next 10 minutes there is 0 chance that they will be kind of receiving this electric shock. The second group heard the following: in the next 10 minutes there's 100% chance that you will receive an electric shock. And finally, the third group heard the following: in the next 10 minutes, there's 50% chance that you will either receive an electric shock or not receive an electric shock. Which group do you think was the most depressed and the most stressed? The first?
The third one.
Of course, the third one. Isn't it strange? So you would love to have an electric shock instead of risking not having it. So you like the bad instead of the uncertain. And you see, when it comes to teaching, we're not very good at kind of educating our students to be prepared for the uncertainty that future brings with itself. And so that's the problem here. And the third reason is that we may or we may not have the right frames. Okay, what if I tell you that my husband is a lion? How do you imagine him? Okay, don't answer. I hope that your automatic answer was like that he's brave, strong, defending, whatever. I hope that you didn't think about lions like stinky, roaring and hairy things. So you wouldn't say that my husband is that kind of shouting type. Although you could have. The frame the metaphor brings is filtering your cognitive system and tells you what the new information is about that you just received. So my husband is in a way now familiar to you because of this filtering effect of the frame. Now, which yogurt do you choose? One, it contains 20% fat, the other is 80% fat-free. I hope it's not too early to realize that it's the same product. However, if you had to reach out to the shop shelf, which one would you take home? Of course, I mean 73% of you, according to research, would take the 80% fat-free because your cognitive frame for negativity that is fat tells you that you should avoid, so you should get rid of it. So it's better if it's free than if there is some, okay? Or there are stories in which we realize that even the wording, and now think about again rhetoric, even the wording frames you so heavily and so seriously. If you know this story or if this exercise, please don't say the solution, don't say the end loud, but allow the others to ponder and think about it. So take this. A father and a son are traveling together. They suffer a serious accident. The father dies on spot. The son is taken to the hospital, has to be operated. The surgeon looks at him and shouts out, "Oh my goodness, I cannot operate him because he's my son. How is it possible?" And I really don't want you to think about any more kind of science fiction ideas like the father resurrected, or there's 3 stepfathers, because the surgeon is the mother, and so a female. And because of the wording, that's such a hard frame that we cannot really get rid of it. Think about rhetoric and the novelty in the rhetorical thinking, how wording becomes a focus in the rhetorical literacy. There was another experiment suggesting how important are the words that you choose for your expression. Respondents were asked to look at a video in which 2 cars went into each other. Okay, so this was a film. And everybody looked at the same film. And every small group they were divided into were asked the same question apart from one word. And that one word was the naming of the crash. What do you think? Were the guessings different according to the chosen word? Are you sure? So one word decided everything, all the guessings? So do you think that people guessed different speeds because of a different word put into the question? Or they were almost the same? Now I show you the results. There was considerable difference, I'm sorry. There was considerable difference, more than 20%. So if the question entailed a different word, the guessings were somehow going away. And what's even more interesting is that after 1 month, the respondents were asked again what they remember of the film. And those who were kind of confronted with smashed, the word smashed, they recall that there was blood. And there were bodies, although they were nothing like this in the film. So choosing the right word means that you create a kind of reality. And if it's against the future, if it's dystopic, then you will have a different frame. And I know that you immediately thought about your words. If you take researches from advertisement, from the advertising sector, it's clear that for 30 years now, the meal yogurt has not been advertised by anybody else but only women. So it looks as if yogurt was a female food. And it's definitely, so there's nothing else but women talking about yogurt, eating yogurt. So I'm not asking any kind of males here to say, so men here to yogurt or not. But the company has realized that this must stop and reframed. And you see, this is what I call a rhetorical act. reframing, giving a real frame to what's going on. Let's say there is a university canteen at the University of Warsaw. Which canteen would you go to, or would you taste more? The canteen that serves, let's say, zucchini cookies, or the canteen that serves grandma's zucchini cookies? Grandma zucchini cookies are better, aren't they? With the same picture, the same food, sounds so much better and so much tasteful. So research has shown that we feel that in grandma's zucchini cookies there are more taste, more calories, and it is worth more money. So when it comes to framing, we need frames, and we need well thought of frames. The whole notch theory, for which Richard Thaler has been awarded the Nobel Prize, is about this kind of reframing and refocusing, giving you a different path to draw decisions. Isn't it rhetoric? Isn't it rhetoric that gives us the framing and the bravery to look into the future in which we have to get to a decision? So the nudge theory started with a fly sticker in the laboratory of, yeah, you know. So I'm not going on, it's too early in the morning. But yes, when you help people refocus, it means you help them to reframe, and it means they may be more ready for what to do and what's in the future. This is also a visual reframing, facilitating people to move physically. It was in Stockholm, in Brisbane, and so forth. So this was a campaign to make people move. So the piano keyboards were kind of stuck to the static stairs, and people felt they really want to try it. Or they really want to run in Munich, in the underground. So reframing and finding the right frame is really a challenge, and it's really a challenge when it's spontaneous framing. So sometimes framing happens unintentionally. So you put out a billboard and you haven't realized that there is another one. Again, this is framing, so very steady. And the Reno Casino for gentlemen. So sometimes you don't know what your message is going to be embedded into. And sometimes framing happens unintentionally, but you have to be more intentional. I think So, what if it comes to the future? Do you have mental frames for your futures? Is it the very archaic kind of way to the future? That's a problem if it's yours, because it means someone has been before you and has kind of constructed that road. There's no one there. It's you who will build this road if it's a road. So it's passivizing. You need a better one. Is this a better one? Is this a better frame for the future? So some researchers say that we are afraid of the future because we do not have the right frame for it. A dice game is not the right frame because it means that you are kind of too open to fortune. Or climbing a hill, isn't that a funny frame? Like would you realize, like with the lion, that when you climb a hill, you will get to a very small point where there's thin air, you won't be able to breathe, and then you will have to come down. If that's your future, congratulations. So the problem here is that no one is kind of offering us the right frame, and we are not helped by rhetorical thinking to find our own. The fourth reason is learned helplessness. You may have heard about it. Sometimes we face repeated stress from situations, and we learn how not to cope with that stress. So sometimes we learn something that will not help us to cope with the future. This is learned helplessness. So when you realize you cannot control something, you will learn how helpless you are. And that's just a picture. The fifth reason is impatience. So our students are impatient. We are impatient. Do you know how long it takes for you to get impatient when you're looking for something on your smartphone and you're just trying to find a web page? So how long time can you endure to wait for information? Just guess. how many minutes?
4 seconds.
4 seconds, no, 2. and the average download is 7 seconds. So you get impatient quite a lot of times in a day. Impatience means that you don't have a purpose. Impatience is purposelessness in a way. And when it comes to rhetoric, rhetoric is the intentional and purposeful kind of preparation for the future situation in which decisions will have to be drawn. So impatience can be fought against by rhetoric, but impatience will kill your future kind of trust as well. The sixth is that we trust knowledge too much. Aren't we living in a knowledge society? Truly, we do live in a knowledge society among smart devices. However, we believe in data, though data is not meaningful. We pursue information, although information is just a connection between at least 2 pieces of data. We kind of celebrate knowledge, but knowledge is just information in a context, and we don't deal with wisdom. There is wisdom research, considerable body of literature that deals with wisdom. And I do think, and I do suggest for my presentation today, that we need wisdom as something that has to be taught. So we teach knowledge, but do not teach intuition. We teach knowledge, but we do not teach intelligence. We teach explicit knowledge, but do not teach tacit knowledge that is ours without kind of explicit learning. And we teach analysis, but not critical thinking. Wisdom is about a proportioned way of thinking about the world, looking at the big picture, but sensing the nano level, the micro level at the same time. So we should celebrate wisdom more than knowledge, and wisdom more than data, because rhetoric gives us some kind of helping hand here. Here are the components of wisdom. If you look at it, you will realize that this is somehow the outline of the rhetorical study. But I will go deeper into it a bit later. And there is a seventh reason, the end of illusion, the end of history illusion. So there was an experiment in 2013 in which respondents were divided into 2 groups, predictors and reporters, and they were asked almost the same question about change. Reporters had to think about the number of changes they experienced in the last 10 years. And the predictors had to guess how many changes they will face in the future. And interestingly enough, the number of changes they guessed were systematically less for the future than for the past. So we do not believe that the same amount of changes will occur, which means we always feel that we are at the end of history. So we are somehow on a static stage, or at least an almost static stage, and it was a kind of indifferent to age. So even if the respondent was 18 years old or 65 years old, the answers went the same. I mean, you can see the age kind of coming, so not many changes are happening. And now let me reflect to these kind of blinders and objections to the future in terms of rhetoric. So how rhetoric can resolve these problems. Think about the classic rhetorical situation, Lord Bitzer, Consigny, Watts, saying that the whole rhetorical situation is something formulated for what's coming. It's about exigence, it's about contingency, it's about taking the risk to pursue it. So the whole rhetorical situation is built upon uncertainty. Think about présence by Cain Pederman, saying that the rhetorician, by selecting something, gives a new focus, a reframing of the whole reality. And think about tropes, the extensive study of tropes and figures that we were taught in the realm of stylistics, though it's more about framing and cognitive working. Tropes are about cognition, and figures of speech are about reframing and nudge. So rhetoric, even in the classical ages, offered so much to be prepared and to be given the right frames or the problematic frames. But think about the Aristotelian phronesis. So what was expected from the speakers in rhetoric? The speaker had to be moral, the speaker had to be competent, and the speaker had to be wise in practicalities. Phronesis is a central notion of classical rhetoric and its practical wisdom. So rhetoric started to teach wisdom as a practical rationality, as something like knowing what's bad or good for humans. Are these big words? Yes, this is what we're not talking about in schools presently. Or we talk about in schools, but in other kind of, in the subject matter of history. So even recent research is about this phronesis. The information that Richard Lanham gathered from classical rhetors about how the speaker, the rhetorical person, the homo rhetoricus should act. And it's full of flexibility, it's full of playfulness. So it's from Herennius, it's from Cornefisius, it's from the classics. So Lanham went back to the past. And when you look at this list, you realize that rhetoric is a kind of future skill, something that may help you to deal with your fears for the future as well. Look at this kind of translation and so forth that you need in terms of language. So when it comes to the main future skills that analysts talk about, we realize that there's not much new under the sun. However, you should know, and we all should know, that for a century now, we as homo psychology, I think it's there, the homo psychologicus, as Martin Seligman puts it, we are the prisoners of the past and the present, as I've already said. So if you are someone today and want to know how another person will kind of behave in the future, the only thing psychology says is that you should know about the history, genetic makeup, the present stimuli, and the present kind of emotions. Is it enough? Definitely not. So Martin Seligman and his colleagues published a book titled Homo Prospectus. And the Homo Prospectus is based upon a concept that the whole human psyche is programmed for the future. So what if the mind is not a storehouse of knowledge, but an engine of prediction? And what if we are not driven by the past, but we are invited into the future? I really suggest that you should read a very interesting book. Very interestingly, not many people are talking about it. It's so kind of, it also should be a reflection of ours that we may not want to be prepared for that kind of thinking in terms of future. So the Homo Prospectus is a Homo Rhetoricus at the same time, imagining alternatives, think about persuasion, and stretching into the future by applying linguistic and communicative means. The future skills when it comes to think tanks and institutions who are researching future skills, just a question, how do you think people are researching future skills? What are the methods? So how can future skills be kind of researched? So there are several methods. One is the so-called Delphi method. That's an interview method. So you go to powerful people of today and ask what the future skills they think would be. The second is horizon scanning, so looking at emergent kind of phenomenon in the context of statistical data, trend analysis, and so forth. So the future skills you will see listed on my slide is a kind of collection of many researches of this kind. But look at this list. So these are what kind of think tanks say the most important skills for the future will be in the workplace and in schools. What's your first impression? These are all soft skills. None of them are really hard skills because we don't know what hard skills will be specifically needed. So these are soft skills. And the green ones are almost about rhetoric too. So critical thinking, communication, social intelligence, sense-making, and future mindset. Very shortly, let's have a look at that. So what is communication when it comes to the future? I know this, I think we all know that this is an overarching term, so communication is everywhere. However, McKinsey, which is a global company, surveyed 18,000 people in 2020 from 15 countries and identified 56 key skills for the futures, and they grouped them into 4 big modules. And okay, I won't go on with numbers. What they wanted to see, whether these 18,000 people are ready for the future in terms of these 56 validated skills that would be or will be needed. Guess the skills that we people are the less kind of good at presently. So from this 65, which you cannot see on my slide because the letters are too small, but I think you wouldn't ever guess that the least kind of known skill or practice skill is not just software development and understanding digital kind of algorithms, but one of the worst was communication. So even though everybody is communicating, we are very bad at communication for the future, because communication here is a rhetorically kind of defined communication, starting with attention, going with the narrative, arguing, listening, and asking the good questions. So don't believe that our students are good at communication and communication for the future. We are the least prepared for challenges, at least according to McKinsey's survey. The second skill is social intelligence. Do you teach social intelligence? Is it possible to teach? What is it? As opposed to Binet, who said that intelligence is logical verbal, like numerical and verbal. Howard Gardner said that we have 9 intelligences. Among them, the most important ones are the intra and interpersonal ones, because that are the problem-solving skills that we need to live with ourselves and with others. And so social intelligence is a complex of communication and consciousness. This is what at least Daniel Goleman with emotional intelligence expresses, that this is a kind of adaptive communication. This is what rhetoric is all about. This is what classical rhetoric taught us, to be socially intelligent. So be peaceful with yourself and thus credible and offer something to the other. The components of social intelligence are this: warmth, trust, politeness, and curiosity. Who teaches curiosity? How can you kind of wake up your students' curiosity? Well, rhetoric dealt with it, or when it made students try themselves in different roles and so forth. So again, rhetoric has a lot to offer. When it comes to the future mindset, I listed some of the needed kind of principles when you have a future mindset or a rhetorical mindset. It means that you rather work with insufficient questions than insufficient statements. You need novel people and phronesis, the practical wisdom, the practical rationality, like the common sense that rhetoric kind of offers us. Fewer attempts to capture what's certain. You need flexibility, more focus on plausibility, more improvisation, and less routines. You remember Lanham's kind of list of the Homo rhetoricus, that you need to improvise, you need to work with the moment for the next moment, you need to be flexible, yes, you need more humility and less hubris. You remember classical rhetoric started with captatio benevolentiae, to be modest, to be open, to be ready to serve the audience. And critical thinking, I know that you know what's the problem with Cinderella's shoes. Do you know the problem here? That's a big problem. So generations are spoiled with this tale. Okay, that's just a joke. But you see, there's a big problem, critically thinking, with Cinderella's shoes. What? That if it's a pair of shoes that only and solely fits her, because that's what's the basis she's chosen by the prince at the end of the tale, how come it fell off at the beginning? So isn't that a critical problem? Have you ever thought about it? So you see, critical thinking is something that goes against improvisation and creativity. Rhetoric were made up of these two kind of different sets of skills. So critical thinking, Socrates died off because of being sentenced to death for the reason of asking too much of his students. So critical thinking is disinterested, questioning, deconstructive, manual, testing, systematic, detailed, enriching aspects. That's rigorous. So while phronesis is creative, it's rigorous, but you need critical thinking for the future. Otherwise, you will face a future that you don't know. You know when you think critically, because then you will feel very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable.